This video is sponsored by Videolancer. Today we will create a very amazing looking particles logo reveal animation inside of After Effects using trapcode particular. I am Nikhil from Dope Motions, and without any further ado, let's get started.
Are you familiar with these video transitions? Certainly you are. Nowadays, they are the most popular transitions on YouTube. Videolancer motion designer who developed them have created more than 3,000 of such handy seamless transitions for After Effects as well as for Premiere Pro. Try them now. Free versions are available for all subscribers of Videolancer channel. Links for downloading in the description.
Alright, so here we are in After Effects. Let's start by creating a new composition. Let's call this main comp 1920 by 1080. Let's make this 30 FPS, 10 seconds should be good. Hit OK. Then I'm gonna go into layer, new solid. There we go. You can also hit Ctrl Y to create a new solid. Call this particles. Alright, then let's select the ellipse tool and hold Ctrl and Shift while dragging it just like so to create a circle. Maybe this big should be good enough. Then go into mask and select the mask path, hit Ctrl C to copy it, and then I'm going to delete the mask. And then we can add the particular effect on this one. So trapcode particular. So now you have some really nice particle emitting. Then what I can do is go into the emitter settings and onto the position. I'm gonna hold Alt and click on the stopwatch of the position, and let's actually select the position, move the time indicator at the very beginning, and hit Ctrl V to paste the shape. That is the mask that we created. So now you can see the particles follow along that path. Now it's 2 seconds long, so what I can do is actually select the layer, hit U, so we can see just the keyframes. Select all the keyframes and then hold Alt and drag them just like so to around 1 second. So now we have something like this. Pretty simple. And now as you can see at 1 second, the animation of the particle stops rotating. So what I can do is I'm going to hold Alt and click on the stopwatch of the position, and let's add an expression called loop out. So type in loop out, open and close parentheses. So now it's going to keep rotating just like that. Now I don't know why it pauses right here. That seems like a glitch, so I'll go edit, purge disk cache and memory, and I hope that fixes it. Yep, there we go. So now we have our simple animation. Now we can start building up or setting up our particles. First of all, let's close the emitter, go into particles and set the particle size to 0, and then go into the aux setting and set the emit type from off to continuous. So now we have some really nice particles emitting through our aux system. I'm going to increase the particles second to around 300. And also I'll go into the emitter settings and increase the particles per second to 130. Maybe I'll bring down the size of the particles. So let's go into the particles. We don't need any feather. Set this to 0 and bring down the size to around 2. There we go. So now we have something like that. Also for the life per second, I'm going to set this to 2 as well. So we have more, longevity into our particles. Now we can go ahead and play around with the velocity. So for this, you can play around with the velocity property depending on the look you want to go for. So if you want to keep it very subtle, you can keep it at 0. So it's going to be very simple like that. but I want to keep it really, interesting look, so something like that. Also, one more thing that we need to do is I'll go to 2 seconds, create a keyframe on the particles per second. So create a keyframe, hold page down or hit page down to go 1 frame forward in time, and set this to 0 because I want the particles to stop emitting at 2 seconds. So they just stop emitting and goes out from the frame. So for that, we need to set up our velocity. So I'll increase the velocity really high to maybe around, let's go with 400 or something like that, maybe 420, so that the particles goes out of the frame. And then bring down the velocity randomness to 10. And I can play around with the velocity motion if I want to. So I'm going to set this to around maybe 50. So now you can see we have a very crazy animation. So you can keep playing around with the velocity depending on what kind of look you want to go for. I think 300 looks much better. Get this really nice animation. I'll select these 2 keyframes of the particles and bring them closer to like 1 second and 10 frames because there are just too many particles. Yep, that looks much better. Then let's go back into the aux system and let's play around with some settings. I'll set the set color to overlife and then go into the color overlife and let's select a black and white preset. And then we can add whichever color that we want to add. So I'm going to set this to something like a nice yellow and the second color to a nice orangish color. Something like that looks pretty good. Also for the size overlife, I'm going to go into the size overlife and select maybe this preset. Let's see. Yep, that is looking pretty cool. Yep, pretty happy with that. And for the opacity overlife, I'm going to go with maybe this one, or maybe I'll go with the same preset, maybe this one. Yep, this looks much better. And for the color, I'm not really happy with this color, so I'll just tweak it a bit. I'll make this a much more brighter yellow and this one a much more darker orange. So yeah, that is looking a bit nice. Okay, that is looking cool. Now what I can do is let's create a new camera. 28mm looks good. Hit OK. And then I can turn on some depth of field. So I'll go into the camera options, turn on the depth of field. I can see the animation is looking pretty good. So I'll increase the focus distance, but before that I'll increase the aperture and the blur level really high. And then I can play around with the focus distance. So I'll just keep on tweaking it unless our particles are into focus. So something like maybe there looks good to me. So you can play around with the aperture and the blur level, keep it really intense maybe. Yep, I think that is looking pretty great. Now you can see as the particles comes closer to the camera, they are out of focus and looks pretty good actually. So yeah, that is looking good. Now we can add some glow onto this particle. So I'm gonna add some glow to this. For this one, I'm gonna keep it a very tighter glow. So I'll just keep the radius to maybe around 10, something like that looks good. Let's duplicate it. So hit Ctrl D to duplicate it. And this one, I'm gonna increase the threshold really high and the radius really high, just like that. And for the first one, maybe I'll increase the threshold a bit. Just a touch, and yep, that is looking very nice as you can see. Now what I can do is select the particles and hit Ctrl D to duplicate it. Hit R to bring down the rotation properties and rotate it by 180 degrees. So now we have these two copies, as you can see. Also, I'm going to change the blending mode of the top one to screen. And then go into the color overlay and change the colors. So now we have some really nice colors like so. Maybe instead of purple, I'll go with a nice lighter blue. That would look much better. Yep, that is looking great. Okay, so you can play around with the colors depending on what kind of look you want to go for. So as you can see, this is looking pretty crazy effect. You can also play around with the number of particles. So if you want less particles, you can go into the aux settings. Where is the aux settings? Yep, there we go, and decrease the particles per second count. So maybe I'll set this to 200. There we go. Yep, that is looking much better. Let's see if we set this to add. That is too wide, so I'll set this to screen, or keep it to screen, I think. So we have our particles bursting up. Now we can go ahead and add some particles in the background. Just like that, I'll go to 1 second, hit T, create a keyframe on the opacity, bring this back, set this to 0. So we have some very nice and little particles going into our background. And also do some color, or we can also add some color to this. So I'll add a curves adjustment. Let's set this to red, increase the red values on this, bring down the green values a bit like that, and increase the blue values as well. Okay, so that is looking good. Let's create a new composition for our logo. Call this logo and hit OK. You can use any logo that you want. I'm just going to use my logo. Make this really nice and small. Go back into the main comp. Let's select everything. Hit Ctrl Shift C to pre-compose it. I'll call this particles. Hit OK and drag the logo composition on the top of our particles. Let's select it and hit Ctrl D to duplicate the particles. Let's hide this for the moment and change the track matte of this one to alpha matte, so the particles are inside the logo, as you can see. So what I can do is I can go right over here, maybe 2 seconds and 15 frames. Select the logo, hit T, create a keyframe, go maybe somewhere around there, and create one more keyframe on the opacity, and then I'll go and set this one to 0. Now we have something like that. Okay, let's turn on this particles. All right, and then select both of these layers and displace them a bit in time. So now you can see our logo is starting to get built up right over here. Looks very cool. Maybe I did it reversed, as I need to set this one to 0 and then go right here and set this to 100. Maybe I'll tweak this a bit. You can see our logo getting our shape. Now I can select the logo, hit Ctrl D to duplicate it, turn that on. Go right over at 4 seconds maybe. Hit T and actually tweak the keyframes. So maybe you can tweak this a bit. And now you can see we have this really nice blend in of our logo with the particles. Maybe you can tweak this a bit. Yep, that is starting to look much better actually. See? Okay, that is looking good. Now, pretty quickly, I'm gonna add some text to this. So I'll go right over here and add text. You can of course type in anything that you want. Type into motion, align it into the center just like that, and give it a very simple animation. So I'll hit T, bring down the opacity, create a keyframe, drag that back and set this to 0. So we have a very simple opacity animation just like so. And finally, I'm going to create a new adjustment layer called the CC, add a transform effect to this. Transform, go at the very beginning, create a keyframe on the scale height, go to around 7 seconds and set this to 120. So we have a little bit of zooming animation as you can see. Also, I'm going to add some sharpen to this, maybe around 20. And then a curves adjustment to this. So bring up the glows and stuff. Okay, so I think that is looking much better than before. Now, few more things that you can do is if we go into the particles. So now we have orange particles and blue particles. So I want to add some more, scattered atmospheric particles around the lines. So to do that, what we can do is let's solo this particle layer and hit Control D to duplicate it. So now we have 2 copies. Let's go into the aux system, bring down the size of the particles to 1. And then I can increase the particles velocity, and this is gonna add this really interesting, particles around our strokes. So if I solo this up, you can see what I'm going for. As you can see, this looks cool in itself. So let's say if I don't want any lines, I can just use this kind of particles. I'm gonna do the same thing again with the orange layer as well. So hit Control D to duplicate it. Let's hide this up. Go into the aux system and set the the size to 1 and increase the velocity just like so. So now if I go into my main comp, you can see we have a different looking logo animation, which looks cool in itself. So I'm going to turn everything on. And now we have this really nice detail into our animation. Also, really quick, what I can do is add a background. So let's hit Control Y to create a new solid. Keep this black, call this BG. Hit OK. Let's put this back and add a 4-color gradient on this. Now, the reason I'm not able to see it because we have a particle layer inside of the particle composition. So I'm going to hit F4, set the blending mode of this one to screen. Now we should see it. And no, that's not working. So what I can do is let's select this, hit Control X to cut that up and hit Control V to paste it just like that. Now I'm going to go into the 4-color gradient. Let's give it a nice orangish color. For this one, I'm going to go with black, and for this one black as well, and this one let's keep it a lighter blue, maybe something like that. Also for the jitter amount, I'm going to give it a bit so that we don't get any kind of color bendings, and then we can pull this down because I want very subtle look. I don't want to keep the background just flat black, so I'm going to add this nice simple gradient. As you can see, you can also switch to 16 bits. So that is going to make things look more nice, but it's going to make it a bit heavy as well. But now you can see our animation looks much more professional and very complex. And there we have a nice professional particles logo animation inside of After Effects using trapcode particular. So that is a wrap for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, then make sure to subscribe, comment, like, and follow me on Instagram at dope.motions. I will see you guys in the next video. Till then, take care. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to stay raw, stay creative.